Hello, friends. It's time to read another chapter from God's Grace Keeps Pace. This is a short chapter. It's chapter 12, and it's called Rescue. And another of my favorite scriptures, I guess I should say, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven, and that's Ecclesiastes 3:1. Dallas was a totally new lifestyle. Ben had only 4 weeks of school left when we arrived, and thankfully, that gave him a chance to meet a few children before the school year ended. He was very excited when he found out that our new home was not many blocks from the Dallas Cowboy practice field. It's since moved, but in 1981, it was located in this area of Richardson. They were his favorite football game, and on occasion we saw the players running in our addition. We were told that a few of them lived nearby, and Ben was always on the lookout for players. He would have worn his Dallas Cowboy jersey every day if I'd let him. I finally brought him another one identical to his jersey so that he could wear them more frequently. Summer came, and with it, a much needed break from our old routines. Jan was now a healthy 3-year-old. Healthy is in quotes. In fact, she'd not been sick since December. That was 5 months minus fever. That was just record breaking. We'd indeed come a long way on our 2 years of the program. Ben and I explored the Dallas area together, and one day as we pushed Jan's little wheelchair around the old TG&Y store, an employee, an in-store photographer, chased us down to ask if he could take pictures of Jan. He told me that he had a niece like Jan, and he knew that good pictures were sometimes really hard to capture. I allowed him to take Jan's picture, and he took one of the best pictures we ever had gotten of Jan. I was so pleased. I decided that the summer would be devoted to family, and I'd wait until fall to return to the program. I was so thankful that Jan was healthy now. I was able to find a couple of babysitters in the neighborhood that felt comfortable taking care of her, and I planned some outings with Ben. I was still the only one who could feed Jan, so we couldn't be gone more than 3 hours, but we enjoyed our time. And Ben and I spent most of our days side by side. It was just a very precious time. Fall came. I knew I needed to start the program again, but I realized I wasn't ready to go back to that very rigid schedule. As I prayed and discussed it with Mike, we faced the fact that if I ruined my health, all of our futures were in jeopardy. Much more had to be considered than just Jan. Jan still had sleep problems, and I lost sleep continually. We decided to start patterning and masking on our own, but to hold off actually starting the full-fledged program. The next week in August, right after school started, Ben and a newfound friend passed out copies of the following flyers in our neighborhood. Hello, my name is Pam Whitley. I'm your neighbor, and I need your help. I have a little girl whose name is Jan. She's 3 years old. She suffered brain damage when she was only 8 days old following open heart surgery. We've moved here from Oklahoma City. There, Jan had, quote, 70 mommies working with her. Most of them had worked with her for 2 years, giving 1 hour a week of their time. During that time, we saw Jan's personality develop into a sweet, smiling little girl, and was that the truth? Jan is still totally immobile and needs hours of work before even crawling. Takes 5 people to pattern Jan's, and patterning is simulating crawling, and that's where I need you. It's very easy, and during the hour you're here, only about 15 minutes will be actually spent patterning. It's a nice way to meet people, and what could be more rewarding than helping to save another's life? I'll have a coffee Friday, August the 28th, and this was 1981, at 10 o'clock. If you'd like to see the patterning demonstrated, please come. Thank you, Pam Whitley. Patterning schedule, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9:30 to 10:30, then 1 to 2. By August the 31st, we started our abbreviated program with a whole new set of patterners. I also found there was a handicap program available for 3-year-olds in the public school system. I enrolled Jan there, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays, she actually attended school. I had time for myself, and it was wonderful. I could now meet Mike occasionally for lunch, something I hadn't been able to do for 3 years. The new schedule worked for all of us. Jan continued to be healthy and eat well for me. We were excited when she finally made it to 25 pounds. The first thing people commented on when they met Jan was how happy she was, what a sweet disposition she had, and how healthy she looked. No one can believe she hadn't always been that way. Again, thank you, Lord. We lived down the street from Ben's school. I asked to be his homeroom mother. In my heart, I longed to reestablish the relationship that I had with Ben before Jan took all my time days started. And that would be a start. The first time I helped with the party, I couldn't find a babysitter, so I took Jan. The other kids stared at her and whispered among themselves. Jan was in her little orange wheelchair, and of course, she couldn't walk or talk like other 3-year-olds. When she was in new surroundings, she didn't smile much because she was busy listening to all the new sounds. I was afraid the children's reactions made Ben uncomfortable, although maybe, the truth being known, it was me that it bothered the most. I asked the teacher if it'd be possible for Ben's class to have a field trip to our home so that I could explain to them about Jan and tell them why she was different. I wanted them to see what Jan was really like. The teacher thought it was a great idea. We lived in walking distance of the school, and on the day the kids came, I began by showing them a scrapbook. They looked at Jan's New Year's Day pictures, her pictures before brain damage, and the ones after. As I patterned Jan, I asked the children to join in singing and the entertainment that we gave to Jan for the 5-minute session. Jan was feeling good that day, and she giggled and laughed and even tried to sing along by going, ooh, ooh, ooh. And somewhere I have some cassette tapes that have Jan on it, doing her oohing as we sing Jesus Loves Me to her. It was amazing to watch those third graders go from being afraid of Jan to fighting over who could push her in her chair and play with her first. I thought if only people could be educated about others who were different, I suspected the results would be very much the same because fear would be gone. Everything seemed to be finally settling down to a new normal, at least more normal than life had been in a long time. We found a new church and started to feel at home. A few boxes still remained in the corner of our room that I'd not unpacked. For some reason, I just left them there. Mike wasn't satisfied with his new job. He told me things that were going on at work that made him very uncomfortable. We prayed about the situation, and finally Mike's prayers turned to, Lord, get me out of this mess. Of course, his plan was for someone to offer him a better job. As we know, God doesn't always work the way we expect. Mike went to work one Monday in October and found a letter on his desk asking for his resignation. We were stunned. That wasn't the answer we were anticipating, but it worked. It quickly got Mike out of his mess. It also was the beginning of a transition in Mike's walk with God. Being fired was a very humbling experience. In the years that followed, when Mike shared his testimony, he said he needed to be humbled, and God knew just how to do it. Mike had many connections in Oklahoma, but he had few in Texas. He was discouraged, and he decided he didn't want to stay in Texas. He wanted to go back home to Oklahoma. Within 2 days, he'd found a new job in Oklahoma, and we'd put our Texas house, up for sale. I remember when he found that new job, he met with Dick Bogert, who is an Oklahoma oilman, and Dick made a contract, wrote out a contract on a napkin, and Mike signed the napkin, and that's who he would go to work for soon. We lived there only 6 months. Our home in Oklahoma had sold 4 months earlier, so we had to find another place to live. We knew we wanted to buy in the same school district that Ben had previously attended, so that left us only four houses to choose from because that was all that was in that Harvest Hills district area. But we found one. By December, we moved. The new home we found was perfect for us. It was built on a lot we'd considered purchasing the year before we moved to Dallas. Knowing our situation with Jan and that we'd moved only a few months before, Mike's new boss hired a sweet lady to help me unpack so that I could be ready for Christmas. I knew God was in control, and it was wonderful to be back among old friends. God's grace keeping pace. I found that God met me in unexpected places, like TG&Y for a treasured picture of Ben and Jan. He taught me to humble myself and ask for help along my journey and to accept others' help too. He seemed to emphasize I wasn't to go back to my independent and self sufficient ways. And I can tell you that's been a lifelong struggle, still is. Um, so let's keep looking for his glimpses of grace. They are always there. And let me see if I can find that picture of Jan. Oh, I think it's right over here. That was taken at TG&Y that long ago day. I love this picture, and I can tell you that it has hung above the many places that Jan has been. It hung at the Children's Center. It hung at Corn, Oklahoma, and it also hung at the last place she lived, the center in Edmond, because I always wanted people to know if Jan was not smiling and she wasn't responding, that when she felt good, this is what she was like. What a blessing this picture was and continues to be to me today. Okay, people, I love you and I pray that God's grace is keeping pace with you today, whatever you're going through. And I know some of you are going through some really hard places. God's grace is sufficient. And that does not mean that life will be easy. It just means we can walk in the knowledge of He is there, He hears our cry, and He will work our hearts to His good, to our good. And we can just bank on that even when it's hard. Bye bye.